This episode of Currently Inked for September 22nd, 2016 is brought to you by Van Ness Pens at vanness1938.com. Hello everybody, welcome to another Currently Inked episode. Glad to have you back. I'm back in the studio again. Had a real great premiere of the new season. Really excited about how that went. Obviously, some people like the new format. Some people don't like the new format. It's going to evolve over time. A lot of people complain that it is too polished or too precise, too concise rather. And I get that, but we'll play around with it and see how it goes. You know, it's important that I put together a show that I like as well. And, you know, it's one of those things I've often said, you can't please everybody. It's kind of silly to try because everyone's got different personalities and preferences and that sort of thing. So I'm going to keep doing them. I'll try to make them as nice as I can. Part of the reason I focus so heavily on the production issue, the production quality, is because that's a personal area of interest of mine. It's not because I feel like the pens need it, but I happen to like videos. Even the videos I watch on my own are videos that tend to be a little bit more highly produced. It's just something that I enjoy doing and something I've had a lot of fun learning about. So that's kind of why I've focused some energy on that. But I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's kind of why I do these Currently Inked videos, which are a lot more conversational and just sitting there and talking and that sort of thing. So, anyway, let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's happened this last week. So this last Friday, I went to the Seattle Pelican Hub. Pelican does this once a year in September usually, where they, give you a swag bag, and it's just a fun chance for people to get together and talk pens and share their pens and that sort of thing. So this is the second year I've attended one. The one last year was not, it was a nice event, but I'd say maybe 15, 20 people showed up. This year, I'd say it was probably a lot closer to 50. We had a real large group this year. And so that was a real kudos to Susan, who put it on this year, and Constance, who did it last year in our little group. So that was a lot of fun. Met some new people, played with a lot of really nice pens, had some good conversations, and so really enjoyed that. Got an extra bottle of... Got to go grab it here, of the Pelican Aquamarine, the Edelstein Aquamarine. Nice ink. I like it. I already had a bottle, so I may be giving a bottle away, or I may just hoard it because, that's clearly what I do. Aside from that, I also got this week my new cover for my Traveler's Notebook. So this is not a Midori notebook. This is from the Etsy shop, Shopjot. Shopjot. And I've talked about this a little before, but one of the things I like about this has 4 elastics on the inside as opposed to just the one, or if you stretch it, 2 that come with the regular true Midori. The leather's not quite as thick, but she's also grommeted the elastic holes at the top and the bottom, which is a real nice touch. The only thing that's missing on this that I liked on my old one are the bookmarks, so I'm going to probably figure out a way to add a couple of those bookmarks in here for my daily log, for my bullet journal, and for my Currently Inked log, so I can keep track of what page I'm on. Got my tea. And I got my hoodie because it's a rainy, cold day in Seattle. The onset of fall is here. The garden's kind of dying out, so I am back inside for the season. I was writing a letter last night, and I told my pen pal, it's like, to me, pens are really a fall and winter hobby because the days are short. It rains all the time during the winter. You get your cup of tea, your cuppa, and a few sheets of paper and just really sit down and write, and it's very cozy and comfy and feels like the holidays to me. So the summer, I love to be outside and working in the garden, but this time of year, this is where I like to be. So let's dive into some questions and some pens, shall we? This question comes from Sam in Japan, and for some reason I think I may have answered this before, so if I have, I apologize. I usually try to clear out the submitted question log every time I do a new video, but I may have answered this in one of the 2 videos ago. I did like 7 takes of the video, and that I may have answered it in one of the takes, but that take didn't make it to the final release. So I apologize if I've already answered it. If I haven't, good. So Sam asks, can you recommend some good inks to use in flex nib pens? I have had differing results, and rather than go through months of trial and error, I was hoping to learn from your experience. It's hard to say specific inks, but I will say that my experience is you want an ink that is a little bit thicker. Some inks are really watery and don't do real well in flex pens. Other inks tend to have a little bit more surface tension, and that surface tension is really what you're going for. So inks that I like using in my flex pens, I like using the Diamine inks in my flex pens and Akerman inks. Those both tend to work really nicely. I've had good luck with Sailor inks, and on flex pens, especially really wet ones, I like lighter inks because you get that much broader dynamic range between the lightness of the color and the darkness of the color. So inks that shade, I'm thinking of Diamine Autumn Oak is a wonderful ink to put in a flex pen. Now, if you're using vintage, obviously you're going to want to be careful with what ink you put in there if it's a latex sac. That's the one thing that you'll want to be careful of because some inks don't react well with latex sacs. I don't use any of the glitter inks, the J. Urban or the Diamine glitter inks in my flex pens, because I don't want to mess with the ink flow at all in those pens. That's the one thing, especially on the vintage pens. Those flex nib feeds and the nibs work together so well that I don't want to mess with it. I do not want to mess with it. So anything that runs the risk of clogging that, even though I've never had one of those inks clog, just the sheer possibility that it might is a big fat no. But for me, it's Sailor, Diamine, Akerman, Mont Blanc. Those are the ones I generally tend to use. And of course, you can go with the Watermans and the Schaefers and the Parkers. I tend to find those just a little bit on the watery side for me. I tend to like my inks a little bit thicker when I'm flexing. It helps them keep that surface tension without railroading. So anyway, well, let's do a couple pens. So in honor of the use your words, Matt. Jeez. It's early in the morning. I woke up much earlier today than I was expecting to. In honor of the Pelikan Hub, I inked up a couple of Pelikans. I actually only own 2 Pelikans right now, which seems like a painfully small number. I might have to do something about that. But here is the Pelikan M1000. I have done a review of this. This is the one that I took to a Nibmeister in Los Angeles, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, but had it ground into a cursive italic. It was a medium that wrote like a double broad. Now it writes like a broad cursive italic. Unfortunately, there was a little accident, and again, I don't know how well you can see that, but the feed kind of got mangled. I don't know of a place to buy separate feeds, so I'd basically have to buy a whole new nib unit. And I mean, that's half the price of the pen, and I wasn't really chuffed about the nib anyway, so buying a whole new nib unit it writes really well now that it's been adjusted, but it's just not, that it's a little disappointing about the feed. And that's one thing to keep in mind if you're going to have your nibs worked on. You always run the possibility of damage to your pen. Now, the really, really good Nibmeisters, they've seen pretty much everything. They know what to do. So the likelihood is very small. If you want a nib grind done, especially, just be careful that you're going to someone you trust, because you always run the risk, even with the best people, of a little bit of damage, and you're ruining the warranty by working on the pen. So anyway, that is a little aside. Another question here. This one from Joe in New York City, and actually this goes right along. He said, I'm thinking of having my Mont Blanc 146 custom ground into a stub. The Nibmeister I'm thinking of using claims that he can grind it into an oblique stub using only a few photos of my writing position. I'm hesitant, being that this is my most expensive pen, my camera is a potato, and I think we only get one crack at doing this right. Have you or anyone you know tried an oblique by mail arrangement, and how did it turn out? So I have tried an oblique by mail arrangement. When I ordered my Nakaya, I had an oblique put on there. Now, I didn't send any photos of my writing position. I just said, hey, I want an oblique nib. And I think they had one in stock that either John Madashar or one of his folks had pre-ground, and I think they just slid it on there and sent it out because I didn't need to wait for my pen at all. The thing with obliques are that, if this is the normal writing position, usually it's like a 15 degree and a 30 degree angle on the tip. So if there is anyone, and he told me which Nibmeister he's thinking of using, which is he's thinking about sending it to Mike Masayama. So if there's anyone I would trust to do that via mail, Mike is probably the top of that list. He's just that good. And he'll adjust it for you as well. So to say that you only get one shot at it is maybe not quite right, but I will say that once it's turned into an oblique stub, you're probably never going to be able to take it fully back to a round nib again, unless you go to something like a needlepoint. So you can, he should be able to adjust the angle a little bit, but I wouldn't be too worried about it. It's not ideal, but if worse comes to worse, and kind of in light of what I said of the last one, if the nib just got absolutely ruined, you could always send it back to Montblanc and pay for a new nib. I know that's an expensive repair, but that is also a possibility. So if you have a chance to go to a show with a nib grinder there, I would recommend doing that first, because it's always good to have them tweak and adjust it while you're there so you don't have to send it back and forth. But if that's not a possibility for you, I think with Mike Masayama, there's a couple of other Nibmeisters that I've been really happy with. I think you'd be fine with just a photo of your writing positions. All right. Oh, earlier I forgot to mention the ink I had in my my Pelikan M1000. So let me show you that. A little scattered all over the place here this morning. So I inked up the I think this is the 2014 ink of the year, the Edelstein Amber. It's not in production anymore. Pretty hard to find. I like it. I don't love it. It reminds me a lot of Diamine Autumn Oak, which I like more, which is a little bit darker. It looks really nice in this broad cursive italic, which is a really wet nib. In my regular round medium nibs, I don't care for it. It's a little too light for my tastes. So, anywho. All right, another question. Oh, actually, let's do another pen. This is, I just got this back in the mail yesterday, so many of you have seen this before. This is my Scriptorium Pens Chronicler, and it's kind of based on that old vintage Parker Duofold. So this was a custom-made pen that I ordered. It's called the Mineral C Alumilite, which is a 2-part resin, just a beautiful material. When I ordered this from Renee at Scriptorium Pens, I asked if she could put a Pelikan M800 nib, or she could make the section to fit a Pelikan M800 nib. I had an extra one. So I sent the nib to her. She made the pen, came back, loved the pen. Over time, though, there developed a little bit of a problem with the cap. The threads were off, and they would sometimes get crossed. And before long, I could just pull the cap right off without even having to unscrew it from the threads. So I emailed her a couple weeks ago and said, "Hey, could you take a look at this pen?" And she said, "Oh, absolutely, send it to me, and if I need to make a new cap or whatever, I'll do it free of charge." Which is one of the nice things about using a good custom pen maker. They're usually really happy to make sure that you're happy, and Renee really did a great job. So when I sent it back to her, I said, if you do have to make a new cap, I'd like to have you adjust the height of the finial. Before I'd had her make the finial really short, and I said, match it to the one on the bottom, because it felt a little out of balance. So she did. The old one also didn't post, so when she made the new cap, she made it so it posts, and it posts really deeply. Now, this is a big pen, but she did a really, really nice job with it. And so huge thank you to Renee. She does good work. I think she's got a 6-month waiting list now. I'm on the waiting list again. She's got some vintage Conway Stewart material called Evergreen that I am just drooling over. I have been for like a year and a half. So as soon as I got the job, I sent her the $50 to get on, to hold a place and hold the material for me. And in a few months, when she gets closer to my position, I hope to be able to figure out which model I want to have made, because I love that material. Anyway. That one, speaking of oblique nibs, also has an oblique nib on it, and it's Pelican oblique. It's factory oblique. An interesting thing about their factory obliques is that they are very blobby. They're not oblique stubs. They're very round obliques. So you don't get a ton of line variation, but if you're a pen roller, then it ends up smoothing, making the writing experience a lot of fun. This is a nice wet oblique nib, and I've got it inked up with Robert Oster Moss, which is becoming one of my new favorite green colors. I really, really like it. It's one of the ones I bought at the San Francisco show. Nice pen. Okay, let's see. So this one is from James in Scotland. Sorry, I can't say Scotland without doing a bad Scottish accent. I've been watching the Great British Bake Off. I've been going back through all the old seasons and watching them, and so, learning, practicing all the dialects and the accents and that kind of stuff. It's been an exercise in cultural offensiveness, I suspect. It's a good thing that I live alone and Luke the dog does not judge my poor attempts at accents. But because I do audiobooks, I'm always trying to pick out accents and dialects and pronunciations and things like that. And this is just one of those where it's like, oh, I want to practice these. So anyway, back to James's question. I recently purchased a Sailor 1911 large via the internet from a Japanese site. When I received the pen, I checked it thoroughly and noticed that there are injection molding lines on the grip section. I checked the reviews and forums and discovered that this is a common issue. Side note, that drives me crazy. If you're going to charge that kind of money for a pen, polish out the injection molding lines. Just do it right. Moving on. My question is this. Do you know any process or technique in which I could polish out these lines myself? If not, do you know where I could get this done? So, short answer is I can't give you specifics on the process myself because I've never done it. Anyone who does vintage pen repair should be able to take care of this for you. It's a pretty simple thing to do. When I was in the DC show, I had one of my pens repaired, and I watched Mike Kennedy of Indie Pen Dance, INDY-PEN-dance, polish out a Waterman for me. And they tape up the imprints so it doesn't get damaged or anything like that. So usually that sort of thing is done on a buffing wheel with a little bit of polishing compound. I don't know that you'd have a lot of luck polishing that out by hand, or it would take a long time and a lot of work to do that. So short answer is I would, if you don't have a buffing wheel and that sort of thing, you might want to just send it to someone who does pen repair and have them polish it out for you. It shouldn't be that hard to do. And there may be folks down in the comments section who have done this themselves or who know how it could be done and could answer your question down there. So apologize, I can't be more help, but one of the nice things about our community is they are a very helpful community. Okay, grab another question here and another sip of tea. This next question is from Nestor, and I'm going to probably. I'm going to try to condense this on the fly here, so I apologize. Nestor says, I used to live in Mexico, and I only had one at-hand quality pen shop in which I bought my entire ink collection. He talks about some of the pens he has. I've always ordered online, but I tend to restrict myself because shipping costs and delivery times make this hobby way more expensive than it already is. Now I'm moving to the U.S., to Florida, and I'm planning on getting a really nice pen. My budget is around $500, and I have so many prospects in my head that I don't know where to start. What would you do if you were in my situation to make this purchase more enjoyable? Would you wait until a pen show? Would you buy online to take advantage of relatively low pricing, or would you go to a local pen shop? Well, if you have a local pen shop, I always recommend supporting that local pen shop simply because you got to support the brick and mortar retailers. I think you'll find that the prices you get online and the prices you get at a pen show are going to be about the same, maybe even a little cheaper at a pen show than online because people don't want to have to haul the stock back home with them. So if you can go to a pen show, and I know there's the Miami Pen Show in Florida, I think it's in June, July, something like that. That would be a really great place. I'm getting to the point, and I've said this before, where I will only ever buy my pens at a pen show pretty much going forward. I am just I'm not interested in spending my money to test pens I don't know if I'm going to like. And so one of the nice things about going to pen shows also is you get to play with other people's pens. So you get a chance to consider pens you maybe wouldn't have considered before because you got to play with them. You know, I don't have one in here, but I've got a couple that were like that. The soft fine nib on my Nakaya that I got, that I replaced the oblique broad that came with, I got because I tried a soft nib, one of their soft nibs at the LA show in February and just fell in love with it. So if you can go to a pen show, that's always my preference. I know that's not always possible. But at least if you've got a local pen store, go there. They may not have everything you want, and you didn't say where in Florida you are, so I don't know, if there's any pen stores close to you. But yeah, if you can, go find the pen in person. If you can't, online is a wonderful option as well. And I know that a lot of people do that, but that's just something to consider. So anyway, all right. Grab another pen. Got another one left over from the Pelikan Hub, and you've seen this one before, I'm sure. I'm going to start repeating pens here before too long. This is the Pelikan M800 Brown Tortoise. It is one of the prizes in my collection. I heart it. This has got another oblique broad in it. I just love those Pelikan obliques. And that one is inked up with Robert Oster Tranquility. Real nice dark teal colored ink. Amazing sheen on the right paper. Nice juicy flow in the nib. So that's one I've got inked up right now. Alrighty, let's next on the questions. Marco from Switzerland asks, would you know whether all nibs supplied by JoWo or Bock to the various fountain pen manufacturers are all of the same model, except for size, of course, or are they produced to each fountain pen manufacturer's own specifications? And can you show us how to distinguish a JoWo from a Bock nib? Shoot, I wish I'd read this question before I came in here, so I could show you the difference. So to distinguish the two nibs apart, I almost always look at the feed. Most JoWo, well, I'll start with the Bock. The Bock feeds tend to have this slight slope to so if this is the tip of the nib here, the tends to have a slight slope up into the feed section. It's not always the case, but it is most of the time. The JoWo nibs tend to be kind of flat and then have a shelf on the edge of the feed. I've seen enough that I've been able to start recognizing them. So that's really how I can tell them apart. Most of the time, I'm guessing. It's not foolproof either way. So if it's not marked on the nib, or I don't happen to know that manufacturer X always uses Bock nibs, then it's just a guess. And I try to indicate as such. As to whether the feeds or the nibs are varied by manufacturer, I don't know for sure. I have to imagine that there is some customization, especially with larger volume retailers, because I've gotten Bock nibs JoWo nibs from from Edison, from Franklin-Christoph, from Goulet, they're all different. Now, I know each of those companies does their own tweaking once the nib is in the pen or before they send the nib to you, but I also have to imagine that there is a little bit of customization. Now, whether it's we're going to give you a feed with wetter ink flow, or we're going to give you a slightly softer gold alloy, or we're going to, you get to specify different levels of tip polish. I don't know for sure, but I have to imagine that there is some level of customization. Now, with Bock, I would be shocked if they don't do more customization. And my hunch is Bock does a little bit more than JoWo, because Bock does a lot of nibs for large-scale manufacturers. So I've used a Danny Trio 18 karat nib, which is made by Bock as far as I know, and it is the softest 18 karat gold nib I've ever used. I've used other 18 karat gold Bock nibs, which aren't anywhere near as soft. I've heard things from like Andy Lambro of Classic Pens, where he said he worked with the manufacturer, in his case, I believe it is also Bock, to customize the alloy that they used. I know that the Wahl Eversharp people, when they made their Semiflex and Superflex nibs, customized the alloy for those particular 14 karat gold nibs. So I would say that I'm almost certain that there is some customization. Now, most of the custom makers who order a batch of them probably don't get to customize their nibs too much. They just kind of order the stock nibs. But if you're going to order, a custom nib and have them stamp your logo into the face of the nib and do all of that extra work, my hunch is you can do some additional customization. All right, let's see what's next. Actually, let's see where we are time-wise. Okay. So speaking of, got a lot of nib questions this episode. So Yukio from Holland asks, a lot of custom pen makers use JoWo nibs, and for the gold nibs they use mostly 18 karat nibs, but I know JoWo also produces 14 karat nibs. Is there a significant difference between the writing experience? Are the last ones more bouncy or have line variation? And what is your personal preference between the two? A lot of people say they can't notice the difference. I feel like I can. In my experience, the 18 karat nibs are softer, but they're not as snappy. Both will exhibit a little bit of bounce, and neither one of them is a flex nib. Not without a pretty hefty amount of adjustment. I know Richard Binder will take JoWo 14 karat nibs and grind down the sides to make long tines to give it some flex. That is not, but that's not what the stock JoWo nibs are like. So 14 karat gold can be used for flex, can be, modified for flex, because the material is snappy. It comes back. It's a little more difficult to push it out of shape. It's all those extra materials in the alloy that help keep the original shape and keep its springiness. Now, it's still possible to spring the nib, of course, but so 14 karat nibs will have a bounce, but it'll be a snappy bounce. 18 karat nibs, in my experience on JoWo pens, tend to be a little bit wetter, a little bit softer, but a little bit spongier as a result. So if you're not flexing your pen and you just want a nice wet flow, especially on the downstrokes, I tend to lean toward the 18 karat gold nibs over the 14 karat gold nibs. If you're wanting to try to modify it or adjust it for flex, 14 karat nib is the way to go. Now, I know some manufacturers like Franklin-Christoph, they started off using 18 karat nibs. They've actually moved to 14 karat nibs. They keep a few 18 karat nibs around for people who prefer them, but they've largely opted to 14 karat nibs. I like both. I tend to prefer 18 karat for my day-to-day writing. But I'm also interested in having modifications done to increase flex because I really like flexi nibs. So, there's a place for both, really. A couple of the pens I own don't have gold nibs. They came with steel nibs, and I would like to upgrade them to gold nibs because I like the extra wetness that comes from gold nibs. And I will probably order 18 karat nibs to go in those because that's just my personal preference. All right, one more pen, maybe one more question here, and one more drink of tea. It's all what you came for, to see me drink my masala chai. All right. So, last one. I hadn't used one of these in a long time. It had been about 2 months since I'd inked up one of my Classic Pens LB5s, and that's just too dang long. Too long to go without using one of my beauties. So I inked it back up again. This is the Midorigi, or Midorigi. Again, not great at pronunciations, but which is the Green Trees version, number 15 of 50. Beautiful, beautiful pen. Got the big Sailor 21 karat nib, which writes like an absolute dream. Took this with me to the Pelican Hubs to let people give it a try, which is, I feel like people are like, oh, you're so brave to bring it. I'm like, well, if I'd feel comfortable with anybody using this pen, it'd be the people at the hub. But I inked it up with a matching ink, the Classic Pens LB5, or the Kobe number 35 Suwayama leaf green. Beautiful green color. That's the Sailor Kobe inks, which I got in DC when they were there. So, all right, grab one more question. This one is from Sebastian in Sweden. Been getting a lot of international questions lately, which is great. I love that. Been making some inserts for the Midori Traveler's Notebook just for myself, printing a dot grid and binding the book. But I'm struggling to find a good paper. I've tried some different marker papers from local stores. They're treated on the front side and work really well, but the back side is really bad. So when binding the book, every other page is feathering. I've not special ordered any good paper such as Tomoe River or Rhodia paper online, as I have not seen any reviews that mention how these papers look when writing on the reverse side. Can you talk a bit about your experience with the back side of different papers and maybe show some comparisons? So any paper that is only coated on one side, the bleeding and feathering is absolutely to be expected. Now, both Rhodia and Tomoe River that you buy in most places is going to be treated on both sides. The other option is to look for papers that don't have special treatments, but are just, the finer grains. So the Step Forward papers, the Wheat Straw papers, the Sugar Cane or Bagasse papers, Bagasse, I don't know how that's pronounced, but it sounds like I'm swearing. Boy, the closed captions on that one should be fun. Brain fart, sorry. Hewlett-Packard makes a couple of premium LaserJet papers, the 24 pound and the 32 pound, which are both fountain pen friendly on both sides of the paper. All of those are loose leaf papers, which you should be able to print a dot grid on and throw in a book. I don't like using Tomoe River in Traveler's Notebook inserts. I know a lot of people just love it. I'm not a big fan. The dry times on that paper are so long that for a notebook, it's very difficult. I don't want to have to carry a sheet of blotter paper around with me. So I like papers that will absorb the ink a little bit faster. You're not going to get as much sheen or shading, but for a notebook situation, I feel like that's a better choice, which is why I lean toward the Sugar Cane papers, the Wheat Straw papers, and the laser printer premium papers, because they absorb the ink a little bit better and a little bit more quickly. But with any of those, you shouldn't run into too much difficulty on that. In fact, I don't know. I've got some of the. Let's see, grab it here. Oh, I don't have any in here. It's too bad. So when I write my reviews out by hand of the pens before I type them up, I use that Hewlett-Packard 32 pound premium LaserJet paper, not the inkjet paper, the LaserJet paper. And when I use that, I write on both sides and have no problem. I use Rhodia both sides. I use Tomoe River. I don't like Tomoe River both sides, but it's possible to do it. It's so thin that you can kind of see through the paper, and that drives me crazy. I don't like it. The Sugar Cane papers, I don't have problems with feathering on the backside, but some of the Sugar Cane papers, there's a little bit more bleed through than I like. So that's, I don't use them a lot, but when I do use them, sometimes I get a little bit of bleed through. So yeah, just I'd say play around with it a little bit, but I think if you go with one of the well-known fountain pen friendly papers, I think you'll be real happy with the quality of your books on both sides of the page. The books that I make with the wheat straw paper, I use both sides all the time. And I even do big swatches, and I don't have feathering on any of it. So, all right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Currently Inked. Before I wrap up, I want to say a quick thank you to Van Ness Pens. They have been a great sponsor for me. Van Ness Pens, they've been around since 1938. They've got a huge selection of pens. They've been a real good friend of the Pen Habit, providing a lot of pens for review purposes and for giveaway. They've given me a couple of really great ones for giveaway this season. That'll be coming up soon. For the rest of the month of September, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago when they sponsored that episode, they are offering a 10% off discount on the Aurora Optima, which is a pen that I love. I've talked about a lot. I've got two of them inked up right now, the blue one and the green one. So with the new price drop, they've got a lot of the nibs, a lot of the colors in stock, and an extra 10% off. So you can find them at Van Ness 1938, or if you go over to penhabit.com, the link to the show notes down below will have the link and the coupon code. If you just use the coupon code PENHABIT, all caps, all one word, that'll get you 10% off your Aurora Optima, which is a wonderful pen. And a huge thank you to them for supporting the Pen Habit. I really do appreciate it. They've really been a good friend to this channel. So, thank you so much to Van Ness Pens. All right, let's wrap it up, shall we? Thank you so much for watching. As always, don't forget to find me where you can. The Aurora Optima giveaway that's going to be running on my channel is only going a couple days after this video comes out. I think it ends on the 24th at 11:59 p.m. or something like that, or right at midnight on the 24th. So you've got maybe a day and a half left to enter if you haven't already. You don't have to do all of the steps to enter. Each step is a separate entry, so you can get up to 8 entries, but you don't have to get all 8 of them. So if you're not on Instagram or not on Facebook or not on Twitter, whatever it is, just do the ones that you can, and that will get you in. And I will announce the drawing as soon as I can. Sometimes it takes me a day or two to verify the entries and reach out to the winners. If you haven't watched the Season 4 welcome video, I recommend you go back and do so, because I talk about my process for doing giveaways and the fact that I'm a stickler for the rules, so you better follow them. But I am super excited to figure out who wins this giveaway. It's going to be great. And then almost immediately in October, I've got another giveaway coming up, and it's going to be a corker. So that should do it. Thank you for watching. We will see you here next time on The Pen Habit. Bye.